I never saw the tree was because it gets so connected to the whole canopy of trees that it's not nearly as isolated as sculpture. It's the northwest corner of Washington Square
just
Park.
walk through there.
People that live there, that works there, that have lived there all their lives, I mean, many people don't see it. And we don't necessarily see the trees in the city because we have such important, busy lives and such really, wonderful things to do that never involve trees necessarily.
Are we ready? Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming. This is Culture Trashes Nature, a show that Rich Timperio, SIDESHOW, and I have been working on, and this is our third talk. So today we're going to focus on the lungs of the earth. As Kristin Jones and her friend James Kaechele, thank you, are going to talk about Behold, which is a tree project, and also some background work that Kristin has done that brings us to this particular point in her working on this project. Kristin Jones creates site-specific, collaborative, time-based projects framing natural phenomena against the built environment. Founder, artistic director of Timperio, again, we've got to pronounce this right.
You can just say Eternal Tiber.
Okay, the Eternal Tiber, the river in Rome. She's been working on an multidisciplinary arts festival there. She has been working in the public domain in partnership with Andrew Gensel. She holds a BFA in sculpture from the Rhode Island School of Design and an MFA from Yale. She has 3 Fulbright scholarships, a Rome Prize from the American Academy of Rome, and she is currently developing a collaborative project called Behold for the great trees of New York City in partnership with the YorkTree Trust. And James is a certified arborist from the International Society of Arboriculture. Kaechele leads the YorkTree Trust, a recent developed citywide program dedicated to fostering public-private partnerships in urban forestry. These partnerships raise awareness of the important urban forestry and project preserve and enhance New York trees. James currently lives in North Brooklyn and has also graduated from the State University of New York College in Environmental Science and Forestry.
Thanks very much.
Yeah. Oh, this is great. So I think what we should do, we should start with some slides that Kristin has of some of the work that she's been doing in Rome, and then leading up to the project Behold, and then we will start asking questions and talking about what's going on.
Okay. Well, I'll start from what you said, Ruth. Thank you. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, I believe that creating moments that we can share is something that we can feel like we belong to. It's easier to not just look at something and be outside of it, but attempt to create a situation that can engage people. So I'm interested in installation work, in creating situations that actually invite participation, and where the viewer becomes, where the work is completed essentially by the experience of the viewer, shall I say. What you just looked at was a time lapse that I did at the foot of the Frick Magnolia. It was 25 days, just days, so I took away the nights. Can we play it again? Oh, well, it was just meant to be a background piece.
That's okay.
But, it's.
Talk about it as you show it.
So I will be showing you some images from the project that I've been working on for the last 20 years in Rome. But this is the beginning of my thinking about the wonder and the beauty of our trees here in New York City. when I came, I was away for 15 years working on the project in Rome, and I'm still working on it every day. But I happened to discover this beautiful little book. A friend of mine told me that there was a book called The Great Trees of New York City. I was really excited because I heard that when I had been gone for 15 years, that there was an exhibition called Mannahatta that attempted to reconstruct the island of Manhattan 300 years before that Henry Hudson discovers it. So there was this huge exhibition that was researched for many, many years. Many wonderful people were involved, and they produced this virtual digital model of this island, of its flora, fauna, earth samples. It was really extraordinary, and I completely missed the show. And so when I came back, I thought, well, could there possibly be one tree that's old growth that was never destroyed? Did we completely rape the entire island, all of the boroughs? Has there anything original to this island other than the rock? And so I sought out this little book, which was in the basement of the Parks Department in this box. Right? So I get the book home, and I look in the back, and there's no map, and I'm furious. Where's the map? And then I started to look, and I said, what is there in Manhattan? I've only lived here 20-some years. What is there in Manhattan? And I see in the back that there were 17 great trees in the island of Manhattan, and I didn't know one of them. And I had already lived here for 25 years. So I'm looking at the list, and at the top of the list it says English Elm, Washington Square Park, which is about 3 minutes walk from where I have lived since 1983. And I've never seen it. So I go running out of the house. It's like, where's the tree? What? How did I miss it? And all of a sudden I just see, and I can move to that tree, I see this tree. This is a very, very, very brief little time lapse of that tree. And it's intentionally taken when the leaves have not come out, because part of the reason why I never saw the tree was because it gets so connected to the whole canopy of trees that it's not nearly as isolated as sculpture. It's the northwest corner of Washington Square Park.
Walk through there.
People that live there, that works there, that have lived there all their lives, I mean, many people don't see it. And we don't necessarily see the trees in the city because we have such important, busy lives and such really, wonderful things to do that never involve trees necessarily. So I started to wonder what one could do, and then I thought, this is my mission. I've been away from here long enough. I want to discover the city. So I talked to a couple of people in the Parks Department. I heard there was something called the Tree Trust, and I had read about it in this little book. That when they, you'll talk about that. Anyway, so how did the Tree Trust begin, and where has it been, and what will it do now that James has become the first full-time director of it, which is very exciting. So he's just been nominated, I think began in January.
Yeah.
And so it's a really kind of fortuitous beginning for both of us to think of how artists could, in fact, begin to collaborate with the Parks Department to raise awareness and get different arts organizations to perhaps support the creation of events that can involve people and raise awareness for these magnificent trees, and then hopefully therefore help the Parks Department to protect them. Because when this book came out, there were 120 trees, and now there are only 90. And there are different reasons why. They're not all on public land, there's also on private land. So James knows more about trees than I do. But I have thought that it would be wonderful to celebrate one great tree in each borough, and then as the beginning of a project, and perhaps during that time get the right nonprofit arts group involved in a collaboration that is sustained and that does move forward, and that does invite other artists, not just myself. I mean, I'm somewhat of an altruist. I'm an artist myself, but I also love to collaborate. So I've collaborated all my life, and I love what happens when you put your energies and your mind together to build something that you otherwise would never dream of doing alone, because the synergy is pretty magical, I believe. So this was, we just recently had an event that we invited some of the great trees of the Parks Department to join. I was at the Greenwich House Music School. So the idea for this magnificent elm tree at Washington Square Park is to just begin the project, is quite simply to light it before the leaves come out. So in the month of April, around the middle of April, when like we were saying maybe April 12th, it's a little chilly at night, but as to light the tree the day before, and then as the night falls, the hour after sunset, the light is just there, and the tree sort of appears out of, even though it doesn't get very dark in the city, you realize it never really is quite dark. But the idea is to light the tree and to have this exquisitely atmospheric sound piece that is written by this composer that I worked with before, a fellow named Walter Branke, who writes music that is electronic, and he listens, first of all, to the situation, to the environment. So he understands the roar of the city, the screech of the brakes, and he's actually writing a piece of music that we could all believe perhaps comes from beneath from the roots of the tree. So it's very low, and the low frequencies are. So the speakers will be hidden, the lights will be very evident, and the star is this tree that perhaps none of us had ever seen before until it was lit that night. So it might be a series of 3 nights, and the fantasy would be that you could do 1 tree in each borough, so that you could sort of help to get this awareness of the wonderful trees throughout the city by creating an event. I mean, James will also tell you that, you know, tree planting is usually the most ceremonial event that ever happens, and we're proposing another idea that's to create sort of magical moments with sound and with light, and perhaps with projections that would celebrate these magnificent trees in the most public locations, not the ones that are hidden that you're meant to find only if you search for them. Which is why I discovered there was no map. The map was actually not printed because it's controversial, because people can also vandalize trees. So only if you want to find the trees should you find them, is the word here, right? So I'm just going to show you one more image, and then I'll turn the machine over to James. Let's see. And this is the image that I've been working on to as a sort of a model for what, I mean, it's not beautiful, but it's, you know, how do you light a tree? What's it going to look like? I don't know. And you need an image for your proposal so you can write some grants. So this is the image that we're working on, and that's my hope, is that that I figured out which of the environmental foundations that are sympathetic to the arts especially and to the environment would support this project, so that we're not actually taking money away from the trees, but we're magnifying the trees so that I mean, the hope is that for this site, by next year, I don't know, James Sherry thinks we should do all 5 boroughs next year, and I'm saying, no, let's just start with this 1 tree as a model for what's possible, and to get somebody to adopt the first tree, the first great tree. So perhaps it's a corporation, perhaps it's a university, perhaps it's but that by next year we're hoping that we can get that we can structure the ask and the plan for the growth of the tree trust to get each of the 90 trees that are left in the 5 boroughs be adopted one by one. So we're hoping that the first tree can be adopted next April, and if you know anybody that wants to adopt a tree, how much is it going to cost? $50,000 minimum? I don't know. It has to be something that helps to build the tree trust and promise the future and the maintenance of the trees. So I'm not the economic person that will structure this, but we need somebody.
Yes.
Okay.
Could you just say how old this tree is? Do you know?
Well, nobody really knows. They can make a minuscule little bore and count the rings. Some say it's 330, which could be really old. Certainly none of the buildings were there when it was planted, because it is an English elm. Yes, it was saved, but some people say it's 200.
So my best estimate, you know, comparing this English elm to other English homes you see around the city. It's 330 may be a stretch. Certainly I feel comfortable saying that it's over 200, which is certainly a massive change in that neighborhood. Even in the 30 years that you've been there, the neighborhood has changed immensely.
Yeah, but nothing compared to even 200 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I turn the floor over to
Yeah.
James. I can do your buttons.
So the Great Trees started out of this Great Tree Search in 1985, where folks all over the city were encouraged to go out into their neighborhoods, go out into their parks, and to call attention to and identify those trees that they thought were great. Great means many things to many people when it comes to trees. Great can be a great memory underneath that tree, perhaps, you know, a first
So
kiss
there were
or
five
something like
categories.
that.
There were 5 categories.
But you know, people have these different connections. You know, we have historic trees that are important because of some historical event that happened. We have great trees because of a connection to a important or great person from the past. Great because it's an unusually large tree for its species, or great because of just being an unusual species of tree to be grown in that, you know, in New York City. So you'll see here, this is a tree that was planted by Olmsted at his homestead in Staten Island. And this is a fantastic cedar of Lebanon. And you see this tree that was planted, you know, specifically, you know, by this man who was the fantastic architect of, you know, Central Park, Prospect Park, and many other places. And usually we think of his work as a landscape. But you see that he chose a tree specifically for this place near his home in Staten Island. And so you really see that this is a great tree in that it tells this, like, this great character planted this.
It's associated with noble person, 41 inches in diameter
This is
and 76 feet high.
It's a big one. So we can pop on to the next one. It's a big one.
Oh.
This I think, Kristin, probably is one of your favorite trees.
Yeah.
This is in Staten Island again, and this is a fantastic tulip tree, tulip poplar. And
Outrageous. I mean, you feel like a little mouse.
there is a 6-foot
You
tall
are
man
nothing in
standing
relation.
next to that tree. And it is just an incredible tree. And growing up, I always enjoyed the outdoors, and I'd gone out in the woods and everything. And when I was a teenager, I got the chance to go out west and see the big trees, right? There's nothing quite like it, so I thought, in the east, until I came back and realized that this giant of the Northeast forest was in New York City, this enormous tulip poplar that
80 inches, it says.
made me feel the same way that I felt when I saw those fantastic redwoods out west.
Where is that?
So
Clove
this
Lake.
is in Clove Lakes Park. And it's cool because it's really not far off from the road. So
Yeah, that's-
if you drive slowly and you're a passenger, you can look out the window and you can see this tree. I don't know that there's many people who really notice how great this individual tree is. This is a tree that is easily 200 years plus. This is a
They grow
old,
faster
old
than
tree.
so you can't really compare the
Right.
size of one tree to the next.
And this is in a very sort of natural park setting rather than a constructed park like Washington Square. So there were fewer sort of structural influences from infrastructure. You can click onto the next one.
I was wondering, I don't know if you had mentioned it before, what is the oldest indigenous tree in New York City?
Individual,
Yeah.
it's tough to say, really, because we have never gone around and cored, you know, to count the rings of the oldest trees.
But is there a suspected one?
There are a couple post oaks up in the Bronx, in Pelham Bay, that we suspect are extremely old. But when you talk about a post oak that's really old, it's really not that physically impressive because it's maybe only this big around.
Sort of more bonsai
Yeah.
than grand.
And how old would a tree like that be?
So somebody said that it could be close to 400 years.
Okay.
Wow.
So these are trees that stretch very long into the past. It's amazing that we have them because we're able to, can tell us sort of like that this is a place that was not as disturbed, and this is a place that you're able to find sort of more native historic sites too. It's very interesting. Click on the next one here. These trees are some of my, these actually may be my favorite. This is in Flushing on Northern Boulevard, on the north side of Northern Boulevard. And these are bald cypress. And there are a row of them, and they're in the sidewalk in these incredible tree beds. And they are just massive. They are bald cypress, taxodium. They are really just fantastically impressive. They stand sort of as sentinels along the road, and there are not bigger ones in the city. Absolutely. Absolutely. And they are just so impressive. I mean, it's tough even to see the scale of them, but there's the one right next to this car, and you can see it's a big piece of wood, and they just stand apart from everything else. Just so interesting. So, yeah, to the next one.
Are they rather rare in the area? Or?
And this is a tree, right, that we don't see a whole lot of in the Northeast. You think of a bald cypress, and you think of the South and the swamps, and you think of these cypress knees coming out of the water, and you think of these enormous buttressed trunks. And to see this in New York City is really, it's a unique thing to see. But I think those trees were an inspiration to foresters and the Parks Department to say, you know, this is a tree that does well in urban situations, because if you think about it, those trees grow in the water down south. Well, the conditions underwater are not much different than the conditions underneath our city sidewalks. We have very low oxygen situation for the roots. We have not a whole lot of nutrients or biological activity going on underneath those sidewalks. You know, maybe it makes a lot of sense that a tree that would grow in this stagnant swamp down south would grow really well underneath our city sidewalks. You know, it just so happens it's not far from the office where all the foresters who plant trees in the city do work. So we see those trees and say, well, you know, there's some vision here. This is a good thing. You have a question?
I have a question. The Northern Boulevard,
so you go from Flushing Meadows over the bridge down to sort of like the big, where Northern is split, and then just as it comes back together, we're talking, I don't remember the cross street now. It's if you get on Northern, you go over this big bridge that goes over the Van Wyck. As soon as it comes back down, there's a brick mall in the middle, and then just after the brick mall, on the left, there's a precinct on the right. They're across from there. Yeah.
Benjamin Sweat just produced a new book that I couldn't find before he raced out of the house, but it's called New York City of Trees. And he's the same author of this book. It's a color book that he's been working on for the last 10 years. And they just had an exhibition at the Arsenal that went down on Friday. But it's a beautiful book, and you'll find it in our bookstores, and he actually made a map. So that's nice.
So these great trees, right, there's a lot to be seen in them because they're unique, historic. And so one of the challenges is that the Parks Department doesn't have vast resources to take care of specific trees because they are historic or otherwise great. So these trees, some of them are in a park and they just kind of do their own thing. Others are in a more active area of a park where there's people coming back and forth, compacting the soil, perhaps some kids lighting it on fire. Others are, like those taxodium, growing out of the sidewalk in what is certainly less than ideal conditions. And so one of the aims of the Tree Trust is to protect these trees because they are great and they're worthy of making sure they're still around 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, 100 years from now. So these are two trees. One is in Manhattan, St. Nicholas Ave, and 163rd Street, I want to say. That's the one on the left. And you'll see this very nice little railing around it. It had been in this incredibly small tree bed. It's incredible. I have no idea, trees they're amazing. They do their own thing. It had grown to such a size that it was lifting up the sidewalk. So one of the projects the Tree Trust was able to do with some money from somebody in the neighborhood was to expand that tree pit and put this fence around it to protect the tree. So you see that this is one of the projects that we can do to help protect this tree and make sure that it can continue to survive. And you see, you can't really see it. There's another little fence around this.
That one?
Yeah,
This one over here?
Yeah, the one on the
Is
right.
that the ginkgo at St. Nicholas?
No, that's
The ginkgo.
the elm in Prospect Park. The
Camperdown.
The Camperdown elm. We can.
How do trees manage to live when there's not a whole lot of earth underneath them?
What's incredible is their roots find the space to go. They will grow wherever there is water and nutrients and oxygen. And so trees, just through time, send their roots anywhere. And if there is a little narrow area where they didn't compact the soil underneath the sidewalk, the roots go in there. And it's going to continue to grow, and it's going to push the sidewalk out of the way if it can get through there. Trees want to survive. This oak tree is up at Split Rock Golf Course up in Pelham Bay. And I grew up in Connecticut, and the Connecticut state tree is the white oak. And so I've seen a lot of white oaks growing up. There are, in Pelham Bay, some of the most impressive white oaks I've ever seen. This white oak is a great tree that is no longer there. This is a picture from, it's in that book actually, that black and white, and it was just such an impressive tree. And it's a tree that we were able to do some work on a few years ago to do a little crown reduction to sort of help this tree sort of gracefully age. And in Hurricane Sandy, it took it out. One of the interesting things about this great tree, though, is that it was saved sort of and became a great tree, I think, because the golf course was there. It had been protected from, building and all this, and it got to grow very old. And we've taken samples of the tree, cross sections of the tree, and Columbia has a tree ring analysis lab. And we just sent off pieces of this tree for them to do the official count of the rings, to learn about climate change over the last, what I think is a couple hundred years, to peer into sort of the life of this tree. And had this tree not been preserved, this opportunity would not be here today for us to use this tree, even though it's not there as a living thing. It can give us so much information about the history and how we can help sort of all these other trees survive really well for the next 200 years.
Is there anything that's done with the wood from this tree when it goes over?
So, what's nice about an oak is that it's not subject to our Asian longhorn beetle quarantine. And so we're able to, you take the small branches and you can chip them up and they go right back to the earth. But pieces of it are sitting sort of behind Bronx Forestry, and we're trying to decide what the next step is, because a tree like this really should be honored. And so taking pieces of it to learn from, I think, is a great start. What is the next step? This is like a meeting that is ongoing here. It's a conversation. So it's a great opportunity to sort of look at this as a tree and say, oh, you know, like it's a good thing that it kind of got saved, you know, almost by accident. Maybe we should be doing this more specifically and make sure that we intentionally are protecting these great trees. You can hit on to the next.
Estimate of the age?
So I'm totally withholding my guess until they give us the right count.
So you're going to know.
Yeah, because we want the real deal, what it is. It looks like it has to be close to 200. I mean, it's just an incredible tree. So what are the things that we can do to help protect these trees from an arboricultural standpoint? From one of the things, right, that we do when we go to the doctor is everybody gets a blood test, right? The doctor, we got to get the blood test so we can find out what's going on underneath, what's inside, how's the liver, how's the heart, how's all that. So you can't draw blood on a tree, but what we can do is climb the tree and take a look. We look at the tree as a physical structure. Is it holding up physically? And then we look at the other side of the tree, which is the biological tree. Is it functioning properly? Are the leaves coming out at the right time? Is the color of the leaf right? Let's measure the amount of growth on the twigs over the last 5 years, because we can do that and say, is it growing less every year or is it maintaining? Last week, on Wednesday morning, we were in Tompkins Square Park working with the historic elms that are in that park, and we did a climbing inspection of 13 of the elm trees that are there that we're concerned about. And that is not sort of regular protocol within the Parks Department to do.
Because it's expensive.
Because it's expensive. But we've decided that, the Tree Trust has decided that these trees are worth investing to protect because they are a legacy. They are iconic of this park and of the history of parks in New York City. And we need to invest in maintaining them so that they can continue to live longer than they would be if we just sort of let them do their own thing and cut them down when we don't think they're safe anymore. So we were able to go and measure sort of every one of the big branches, if there's any defect, any squirrel hole or rot or anything. And I think one of them we're going to go back and do some tomography, which is sort of like the tree's version of the X-ray, to see if these trees are as sound as we think they are.
What is it called?
Tomography. So we'll strap a strap with different sensors around the tree, trunk, or branch, and we'll shoot little waves in through the wood, and we'll use a computer to make this model and tell us how much sound wood there is inside. That's really not an invasive thing to do. In the past, we used to use our resistograph, which was basically, it wasn't sound, it was a drill bit that you sort of drill a hole into the trunk, and if it's solid, it's hard to put it through, and if it kind of goes quick, then it's not sound.
But then the little worms can get in.
Still have a little hole in the tree, which is not what you want to do. Other than that, really the next best thing we can do is take a rubber mallet, hit it, and say, it sounds hollow, or it sounds good. So climbing inspection, huge help to tell us, yes, this tree is good, this tree has some issues, and these are the things that we can do to mitigate the risk, to make this tree safer for the time that it's here.
I remember you're mentioning something when we were on the phone the other night about older trees are really beneficial. They do a lot. They produce a lot of things that are really helpful. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that a bit, or is this? I'm sort of jumping into the wrong thing.
No, it's perfect. So, we know that trees are beautiful and that they're nice to have around and that they're good for the environment. But one of the big things over the last 10 years that we've done as tree care professionals is we have put sort of more tangible numbers to the benefits of trees. What do trees do for us? And when it comes to trees, size matters. If you have a big tree, it's going to do more good for us than a small tree. I think that's kind of like an easy concept for people to understand. I'll give you maybe some of the more of the numbers of what a tree does for us here in New York City. So New York City's street trees capture rain in their canopies and tree beds. And in New York City, that reduces stormwater runoff. Okay, so it reduces the amount of rainwater that goes into the sewer system by 890 million gallons every year. And we know that that stormwater goes into the sewer and it has to be processed because it combines with all of the toilet flushing water. And when it rains more than an inch, which is the average rainfall in New York City, in many neighborhoods, that stormwater mixes with that toilet water. And when there's too much volume for the treatment system to handle, there are 422 locations where that mixed untreated water goes directly into our waterways. Yeah, and so reducing, meaning any of the water around New York City, you know, be it Hudson, East, Gowanus Canal, Newtown Creek, Jamaica Bay, the whole deal.
Which is why there's so much talk about green roofs, because we can save the rainwater.
Exactly. So, you know, each tree averages about 1,500 gallons per year of water that's not going into that storm drain, that's staying in with the tree. And then, of course, this is kind of maybe where the culture part of it says, well, like, well, that sounds nice, but like, what's the dollar amount, right? So that's about $35.6 million from all the trees that we save every year. And about...
From cooling?
This is just stormwater.
Oh.
And this is, it turns out to be about $61 per tree per year in New York City. So
That are cost benefits.
that's cost benefits. That's savings from that water not going into the storm drain. So you think about stormwater capture as just one of several different benefits. You know,